Thank you all for participating in this week's events and for taking the time out of your Friday night to come to this lecture. Don't forget that we've got one more day full of amazing events happening tomorrow. Before we get started with Noah Friedman's lecture, I'd like to take just a minute to highlight to everyone that this is the 20th anniversary of HOPES. Super exciting! A 20th anniversary that would not have been possible without HOPES 1. And we can't talk about HOPES 1 without recognizing Kevin Parkhurst, University of Oregon, and HOPES co-founder, a.k.a. the Godfather. So please come up here, Kevin. Thank you. Well, at the University of Oregon, Kevin was an active participant of the campus community as both an undergraduate and graduate student. Kevin helped impact the policies, operations, and culture of the University of Oregon through his work with university administration. As the Environmental Policy Development Coordinator, Kevin developed and promoted the ratification of the comprehensive environmental policy that was established an institutional framework to address environmental concerns and promote environmental responsibility here in university operations. I did that. Yes, you did. For his work creating HOPES and his help to instill environmental responsibility into the university's infrastructure, Kevin was awarded the Environmental Citizen of the Year Award in 1996 by the University Environmental Issue Committee. For his work in participating in HOPES over the last 20 years, we'd like to offer him this small token of our appreciation and ask him to speculate in the roles of how HOPES can work in the next 20 years. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you. We thank you for your service to the University of Oregon and Sustainable Design Committee and offer the small award of recognition on behalf of the HOPES 20 team. And, you have to turn your mic on.
I don't know how to turn it on.
Boop.
All right.
So, take it away.
All right. Thanks very much. That's awesome. I really appreciate it. I really didn't know it would. I could keep it up this long. No. It really was a total team effort, and I'm very proud to actually be here today at 20 years because really it was a goal that a couple of us set, Noah and I, that we would make this thing to 20 years, and it's awesome to actually be to this point. I did want to just go through and just as I'm talking, this is where it started, and it was really a group that, a grad forum, a group of graduate students that met up in 206 over here talking about what we could do to make this school better, make this school more different, change whatever we wanted to do as far as graduate students. I went here as an undergrad in the School of Architecture and Allied Arts in architecture, and I came here because of John Reynolds and being able to be learn from the best in as far as environmental control systems, how we can make changes in the buildings we build, the buildings we make, the things we think about in order to change the world. And I really think that I was blessed to be able to be a part of changing the world, as every single one of you people in here can and will be. We have changed the world. This world, like 1994, in grad forum, we're trying to figure out how we can change this thing. And the big thing that came up was environmental responsibility, environmental issues. Same thing was happening with LEED. The USGBC started that year. And so in 1994, they were just starting. And so we didn't have a framework. But we made it up. We said, let's do it. And basically, Laura Hofferman and Karina Pastor took from that one, the meeting we were really talking about doing this stuff, and they started putting posters up around the school saying, come on, let's have a meeting to see if we can just do something differently. As an undergrad, I came here for environmental reasons. I told my mama when I was 9 I was going to be a solar architect. And 1973, the oil embargo going on, Nixon getting impeached, and the Fremont Bridge going up in Portland. My dad took me to see the Fremont Bridge go up in Portland, Oregon, and I was amazed. And I thought that the integration of engineering, technology, art gives me a reason to do artistic stuff, but also do something for the world. And I went to a small school, Oregon School of Design, for a few years. Luckily, I broke my back and got me a chance to think about what I wanted to get out of school. And I wanted to come to an institution that had more stuff going on, and a person like John here to help us learn about the realities of building this way in the world. And so I came here, and in fact, in architecture school at that point, they had the Solar Information Center. And I think the Solar Information Center was wonderful. Yeah. Here they are, my mentors previous to me and during Hopes. And but Solar Information Center was a building in the next door, and it was. I'm going to be real quick, except for I'm not very quick. And so it was basically in the next room over, and it wasn't in our building. And so we decided we wanted to do that in our building, and that's why we started Hopes. And you can see we have had through the years, if you've been looking at this stuff and not listening to me so much, a lot of great speakers. I mean, amazing people and it is not, we came for, people might come for Eric Lloyd Wright, or they might come for Sim van der Inn, but it turns out that Jason McLennan is the guy that really gave a great presentation that year, or Robert Gilman gave a really great presentation, and you wouldn't expect it. And so the thing that we did was we just had tons of people, tons of options to go to, so that we could change the world. And in fact, we have, because as you all know, you guys study LEED and all that stuff, and it's millions and millions of dollars worth of materials, and a palette that's changed in the last 20 years. And it's because people like us here in this room, got together and said we could make this change. We could get these things together. We can start our own firms. Right now we have Hopes that we have people that have started their own firms, like Sandra Leibowitz right here. She has 20-some people that work for her in sustainable design consulting. And then others that are in charge of people, a principal gunner in 800 people in his firm. We've got people, Renner Johnston from the second year that is a principal in a firm, Magavero Nottistan, that's doing beautiful solar installations for the city of for the state and for the city of Sacramento. And so I just wanted to say that all of us in this room have the ability to make the change. All of us in this room are able to get together with each other and make things differently than they have been. I came here in my undergrad in architecture. It wasn't as strong as it is. There was environmental, but it wasn't the way it is now. And I really think that because we did this, that really did change the culture of this school. And that I hope that we can make that go on more, because it really is an awesome thing to be a part of. All my best friends, my wife, my best friend, my best man at my wedding, some of my closest friends that I'll ever have in my entire life were from this group.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Here, actually, Kevin, you can stay up here. Thank you so much again, Kevin. And I would ask you to do the honors of presenting our next speaker, a fellow Hopes and University of Oregon alum. So take it away. Put the award.
Hi, that's Kevin. Okay. Noah Friedman. I didn't get the bio on him. Noah Friedman. I've known him since he lived in the house behind my house when he started his undergrad. This kid was a baseball player from the Bay Area when he got here, and he has gone so far beyond me as far as the professional world. It's amazing to see how mature he's become, and yeah. Well, I didn't mean professionally mature. That is. And Noah, he started here at University of Oregon after graduating from Berkeley High, and he got his undergrad, and during his undergrad, he hooked up with Michael Piatuk, who was not really a teacher at the time. He did a visiting thing here, and Noah went up to him after he graduated and said, Michael, I really need a job, and I want to work for you. And Michael said, you're a nice kid, and I really had a good time in school with you, but I don't really hire undergrads right out of school because they don't have enough experience. So Noah said, but I could. You really want to hire me because I do a good job. If you could do a good job, I really want to hire you. And then he said again, hey, you got to. Well, I'll call you, Noah. And so Noah actually got that job. And Noah worked for him for a few years and then decided to go to Berkeley to get his master's in urban planning. And during that that stint, he actually had a headhunter from SOM was at a presentation that he did and was very impressed with his skills of blabbing very much, and so he taught a lot. It was a great community meeting. So in the end, he went back to this guy from SOM and he said, I want a job with you, and he got a job with SOM, and he worked for them for a few years, exploring some really great projects down there in his own neighborhood. And just recently, a few years ago now, I guess, he went to Perkins+Will, and he now is a senior planner with Perkins+Will in the San Francisco office, working directly with some great, some amazing people up there, and working on some projects that are literally international projects with some people that are really the shakers and movers of the future. And Noah is one of those up-and-coming ones. And he was the fifth-year co-chair. He's the person responsible for putting up that bench and cob thing in the back there. And that's us after we were filling in that. And I'd just like to say one of my best friends in the world, Noah Friedman. Welcome up to Hopes. Give yourself a presentation. Presentation.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me okay? Is this working? You can hear me, but it's not working? That's okay. We can do this without the audio technology. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you so much. As Kevin mentioned, I graduated from Berkeley High and came to University of Oregon, and I didn't know anything about HOPES. And I didn't know anything about the Solar Information Center, and I didn't know anything about John Reynolds or Howard Davis. I really didn't know much. I just knew that I wanted to study architecture. And I really wanted to get involved in student activities here at school. And when I first got here, I attended the student fair up in the room at the top of the stairs. I guess that's 204. Sorry, I can't remember all the room numbers. 206. Sorry, thanks. And I went, and I don't really recall Kevin or Hopes there, but I do recall Jason Wilkinson from the Solar Information Center. And I saw him, and he was talking about the cool stuff that they do at the Solar Information Center, and I thought, I want to be like that. I want to be like that guy. I want to join that group. And so I got involved, and there was a position open for speakers coordinator for the year. And I thought that was so cool. And I was like, well, what do you do? And they were like, well, you find somebody you like, and you call them. And I was like, you can do that? And so there's a few of you that have probably heard this story before, but I really, really wanted to get my hero at that time, one of the people that was making me interested in architecture, Samuel Mockbee, to come to the University of Oregon to speak. And so I called Samuel Mockbee up, and he answered in Alabama. Sorry. And so basically, he answered the phone, and I told him about what we were doing, and I asked him if he'd come to the University of Oregon to speak. And I said, we have a small budget, and we can pay for your airfare, and we could put you up in a hotel, and, it's a student-run organization, so we really don't have a lot of money to pay you an honorarium. And he said, well, Mr. Noah, let me tell you my homespun philosophy. I was very excited to hear this. And he said, well, Mr. Noah, there's this watermelon farmer, Billy Joe. And Billy Joe has a friend, Fayed. I didn't even know that was a name. So Fayed came by and said, Billy Joe, can I get one of those watermelons for free? Can I get one of the free watermelons? And Billy Joe said to Fayed, he said, well, Fayed, I planted some of those free watermelons, but they haven't come up yet. If you want to wait for those free watermelons to come up, you can go ahead and you can wait. Or if you want a watermelon today, you can buy one of these other watermelons. And he said, and that there, Mr. Noah, is my homespun philosophy. If you could come up with an honorarium for me, I will come to speak at University of Oregon. And I was so inspired by the homespun philosophy of Alabama that I went out and with some help, raised the money for him to come. And I was so excited, and I went back to the Solar Center office, which is in the other building over there, which I can't remember what it's called either, sorry. Pacific, thank you. Gosh, I probably would remember if I wasn't standing up here. And I ran back, called him up. I made the reservations for the airline, and I made the hotel reservations, scheduled the room, made the posters, got people excited. I called him up, and I said, hey, Mockbee, I want to buy some watermelons. And so we got the money for him. And so we organized it. And a few days before the event, we got a phone call. And he had been diagnosed with leukemia and wasn't going to be able to make it to the conference. And so I think that was a really exciting opportunity for me to connect with somebody that was my hero. And even though I didn't get to meet him, he recovered. He went into remission, and he ended up coming to the Hopes Conference a few years later. And so he did make it to the University of Oregon, and I'm pretty proud of that. And I think that planted in that I got the bug for talking to those people and getting them to come to University of Oregon and organizing events and speakers. And people kept telling me throughout the year, they said, have you been to Hopes? Do you know what Hopes is? And I was like, no. And they're like, just you wait. It's really great. And sure enough, it was great. And I think Kevin and Hannah, I can remember when my first memories of them is hunkered down in the office that's up there. It's like now the Interior's office or something. They were always hunkered down there doing something really important. And I just thought it was super cool and wonderful. And I wasn't actually living in that place yet. And they were willing to take me in and let me help out. And I think they gave me a really nice title the first year, the Do It Now coordinator. Yeah, so basically I just was like, I'll do anything. Just tell them, do you need me to move these chairs? I'll move the chairs. Or you need me to fill up water? I'll fill up the water. And so I did that. And then the next year, somehow, somebody thought it was a decent idea to have me coordinate the conference. And that was the 5th year. One thing that we had thought about in that 4th year was, wouldn't it be really cool? We had a workshop, a bamboo workshop, and we had these really great big bamboo trusses, and we just parked them out in the courtyard, and at some point the school asked us to get rid of them. And we thought, gosh, it would be really cool if we could do something that we didn't have to get rid of. And so we started pretty much right away working towards getting this cob bench that's covered with a bamboo structure in place. And that was, again, another amazing experience for me. I had never designed and built anything, really, besides maybe like a little table or something for my apartment. And so it took a lot of effort, and Kevin and I'm going to point out Santos, Kevin and I spent about a year getting that thing built, designed and built. It's on the university campus. Every covered structure on the university campus has to get a building permit. So we had to get a building permit from the city of Eugene, and we couldn't find any testing data anywhere to help them feel comfortable that this thing wasn't going to fall down. And so they agreed to give us a conditional permit, and after it was built, they would load test it and make sure it stood up, and they ended up doing that. And pretty exciting because we looked and looked and looked, and we found out that this was the first permitted bamboo structure in North America. I don't know if any other one exists. The American Bamboo Association came for the conference, and it was good fun. And that was, and so here's some pictures, and that was the crew that helped. I mean, as you can imagine, there was a lot of prep work to get ready for the conference. And the big deal was that we were going to build this thing in a weekend, right? And for those of you that are actually out there managing construction sites, you know that there's a big challenge with those bolts, making sure that those bolts fit onto those metal brackets that we had designed. Those ridiculously oversized metal brackets. But we did it. And it was a huge team effort, And, these experiences for me were really critical in forming my career, moving out of the University of Oregon, mostly because of, I think, obviously there's the sustainability piece, but there's the collaborative piece, right? And I think the thing about HOPES is such a collaborative effort, and it's such a group effort. You have to come to consensus decisions, and it's a volunteer thing, and you don't want to turn people away. And so those are things that I've carried through in my career. And I was really excited, as Kevin mentioned. This is kind of a grainy photo from this workshop that I got. Mike Piatok said he wouldn't hire me, and then I was crossing the border, got a phone call. I was on my way to Mexico, and got a call from Mike Piatok, and he said, "I have this workshop coming up. I need you to make this model for me." And that's the model in the back. And I came back, and I made the model for him, and basically that started about 6 years with Piatok Architects doing what we called participatory design. And it was for affordable housing. And this was a technique that Mike Piatok is one of the people that is a proponent and pioneer of, which basically was what we were doing here at HOPES. So it felt really good for me to be there, and it felt like the right place. And the cool thing about doing affordable housing in the Bay Area is that you work with real diverse communities, and they're oftentimes marginalized. These are all Hmong folks. None of them spoke English except for the brother here, and he translated everything in this workshop. And these are communities that have never gotten this attention, and they've never gotten to participate in the making of the built environment like we were asking them to make. And along the way, it's fun and funny, and you can see that, people are pretty engaged with these participatory processes. And I really, truly believe in that, and the collaborative effort, and that you really don't have one single, sort of the lead designer. It's really a lead facilitator for a process in design, and that still is something that I deal with all the time. Somehow, I slipped over to the dark side. As Kevin pointed out, I went to UC Berkeley for a master's of urban design. So it's not architecture or planning, it's urban design. It's slightly different. Planning is much more focused on policy, and urban design is actually still you're drawing stuff, you're making models, you're actually designing places. So you're actually implementing that policy, but at a little bit larger scale. And I guess what happened was at Piatok Architects, I had started working on larger master plan projects and was really excited to affect change at a larger scale. And I met this guy, John Cricken, who was a partner at SOM, and he encouraged me to come. And he said, "I've got this one project that I really think you would be great for. We really need to wrap it up and get this thing approved and finished," and it was Treasure Island. And I thought, that's great, because that project, and it's so funny because the project started when I was in high school. And, even William McDonough was on that project. When I remember a senior in high school reading about William McDonough designing Treasure Island. And I felt so fortunate that the project had waited for me. So I got to participate in the final 3 years of Treasure Island and really bring it home. And we basically put together a set of documents that are the approval documents for this master plan, and it's been adopted. It's legally binding. And we just lost the first round of doing design on public realm, and that's okay because we're just happy that they're doing a first round. And this is pretty neat because, so this is SOM, and basically you get your 8 feet of desk, and you're not looking, if you look to the right, there's about, another whole floor plate of these, and if you work in a large firm, that's what it's like. And the thing that's scary about it is also the thing that's really exciting and liberating. The thing that was scary for me here is that it was really impersonal, and it felt like just desk after desk after desk, and there was zero private space. But what happened is that actually made it so design was on showcase. And we were urban designers, so we didn't have as many models, but if you looked around the office, there were models everywhere, and you could see everybody's design work while you were there. And here is here is a foam model of Treasure Island. one of the really amazing things about working at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill is, of course, the technology, the digital technology that I had access to. And that included a digital model of the entire city of San Francisco. And we use this continually. And for me, this was a big change because I had been working with modeling kits, physical modeling kits with people. And now I was trying to figure out how to manage and how to bring the same style, a sense of design into a realm that was digital and very polished and kind of removed, as this image in a way is, from way up, 50,000 feet in the air. I don't know if I was able to really find that at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. So Perkins+Will happened to also be collaborating on that project, and I thought this was a really cool opportunity. Their urban design group was not as well developed, and they were being led by this woman, Karen Alschuler, and she is also a firm believer in participatory design. And what I've been able to do at Perkins+Will is merge my two previous firms, my experiences in the previous firms, together. The real hands-on, stakeholder-driven participatory design of Baietan architects, and this more digital and polished and I don't know what to say, high-end design of corporate firms. And now we're not as much working in marginalized communities with diverse groups. We're working with clients with white shirts and ties, but we're doing the same thing. We're putting together these modeling kits and helping people. We're really facilitating the process for them. And this really, where I wanted to go with the digital design and also the participatory stuff, was to use the digital tools that we had as a decision-making tool for the clients or regulators or the people that were approving our project, and also for community members to see what we were doing and get a better sense of what we were talking about when we were talking about doing 4 million square feet on their river. And this is a really exciting project that we're working on right now. And Peter Busby is the lead designer on this, so I'm working directly with him. And this is in Ottawa, Canada, which is the capital of that country. I didn't know that, sorry. I went to California public school, so our geography not so good. But the cool thing about Ottawa is on a river, and the Parliament is a very important building for them, and it's up on a escarpment, and our project is on both sides of the river along these amazing Chaudière Falls. And it's a pretty exciting project. As you can see, it's contentious. This line is a line that we're not supposed to be going over, and we are. So again, you'll see as I move forward in this presentation that it's a lot about helping people and facilitating people making decisions about the built environment and helping them feel comfortable about what we're going to do. And then giving them a visualization. This is that same project. So we're building, this is square. So I'm in the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area. I care a lot about the Bay Area. I feel really lucky to live and work in the place where I grew up. I have a deep affection for that place. And, I think growing up, I thought Berkeley was the most amazing place in the world, and we were the best people in the world, and we were smartest and the most environmentally friendly and ecological. That's not true. Okay, we've got big problems in the Bay Area. And so right now what we're dealing with is we're trying to make decisions on how we're going to develop into the future. And, of course, how we're going to get around. And whether we're going to protect critical agriculture lands or not. And then, of course, going back to really what I was dealing with at Baietan Architects is what are we going to do with urban blighted areas and these marginalized communities? And how are we going to provide affordable housing and quality living environment for the people that live in those neighborhoods? And this is that project we were doing, and it's now finished, and it's a really amazing place. The Bay Area is an amazingly dynamic economy. It's an amazing place to be. There's All those little yellow dots are Fortune 500 companies. We have 3 of the world's top research universities. So it's a very dynamic and exciting place to be, and the economy is really powerful and strong. And of course, the digital stuff is incredible, what's happening, digital technology stuff. And we have an amazing transit infrastructure. We also have an amazing highway infrastructure. And the problem that we have is that we're a culture of drivers. As you can see here, it's still 67% of Bay Area workers drive alone to work. And this has a major impact on our carbon footprint. So working on a project for Google, we came up with a carbon calculator. And so what we were able to do is we were able to calculate by census tract the carbon footprint of different communities throughout the Bay Area, and it's no surprise that right there, Chinatown has the lowest carbon footprint. That's one of the oldest parts of the Bay Area. But then as you go out into the regions which fall off of the screen, the carbon footprint goes pretty high. And San Francisco's not so bad for the United States and not so bad for our own region, but in comparison to other international cities, we're not doing so well, right? We've got a long way to go. And a lot of that's because of driving. And the issue, though, with driving and urban design and carbon footprint is that I think we're pretty close to having a net zero car, right? I mean, at least for how it runs. I mean, obviously the manufacturing of a car has a huge embodied energy, but the net zero car is a real problem for us as urban designers because I think we've gotten a little lazy in coming up with excuses for why people shouldn't drive, and we keep on saying it's carbon footprint. Well, a lot of people respond and they say, we're going to solve that with technology. So there's a lot of other issues with cars, of course, as well. They promote development that's not very social, in fact, antisocial. People are walking less and less. This is my favorite kid. He's actually pretty cute. And they're dangerous. And, of course, they have major impacts on our local and global ecologies. This is just in the Bay Area, actually. It's not somewhere out in some developing country. We always seem to have 2 million more people that are coming to the Bay Area in the next 20 or 30 years. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at what would it mean if we were to house the next 2 million in densities that were similar to San Francisco, Oakland, or Antioch. And I don't mean to pick on Antioch. They're doing a lot to get better. But this is both physically the square that would be required to fit the next 2 million people at these different densities. So it's clear we cannot develop the rest over the next 20 or 30 years in the densities of Antioch. Like I said, we have not been doing so well in the Bay Area. The last 30 years are characterized by suburban sprawl and anti-development movement, Nimbyism, in the urban core. And it's been so bad that the fastest growing city in Northern California is not even in our region, right? That's not really even part of the Bay region. But Stockton is the fastest growing city in Northern California over the last 10 years. And that's a problem because those people, there are not a ton of jobs there. A lot of those people actually live and work in either the Bay Area or San Francisco or Sacramento. And that's about an hour and a half commute. And there's an equity issue there, too, because you can imagine that those are not wealthy people, right? Those are lower-income folks that are being forced to drive an hour and a half each way. There is some good news. The next 30 years is planned, or not planned, but is predicted to be the 95% of the growth over the next 30 years is predicted to be within 5% of the Bay region. And actually the good news is that it's only within 10 cities, really. And so the Bay Area happens to be over 110 different cities. Well, those other 100 cities are full of NIMBYs, and we can't develop there anyway. So it's good that we're going to be focused on these urban cores. This is not actually guaranteed, and that's one of the issues why housing is becoming more and more expensive and hard for people to live in the Bay Area, is because many of the communities that are in red that would be perfect places to develop for high density or high intensity transit-oriented development are communities that somehow still feel like they don't want any more development. My own hometown, Berkeley, or Oakland, or Emeryville, and quite honestly, even San Francisco, they're pretty anti-development and would rather that, in some ways, would rather that sprawl continue. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to try and come up with, we wanted to convince people of the benefits of urban living. A lot of people in San Francisco don't need this convincing, but a lot of people in the East Bay especially do need this convincing. And so we came up with this thing that we call the Lifestyle Guide for Urban Design or Urban Living. And this came out of discussions about how much influence marketing and PR have over our thoughts and the way that we see the world. So I grew up, I think everybody probably here grew up with car commercials where the car always either ends up in a suburban single-family home and goes into a two-car garage or a three-car garage, or they take their SUV out into nature and go tromp around. So what would be great is if, and I've seen more of these, is you have car commercials where people are pulling up to a townhome and it's a little mini smart car or something like that, or maybe it's not even a car commercial, it's a transit commercial or something like that. I think the average American kid sees 3,000 beer commercials before they're 10. So we thought marketing has a huge impact, and if we could actually impact marketing and affect people's way of thinking about how you live, that could dramatically change the way people think about living in the urban environment. And it's not hard to convince people in the Bay Area because we have these things. We have these 3 major research universities, and these really are knowledge centers. And these research universities, they draw people in from all over the world, smart and creative people. But in order to keep them in the Bay Area, we also need to have a robust set of cultural amenities in order to keep them entertained and excited and stimulated and live a fulfilling life. And I think what we found in the Bay Area is that tolerance and diversity are critical to a real creative city and a real postmodern city because the problems that we're facing right now are so complex. We need the widest variety and the most diverse amount of solutions to overcome these challenges. And then we have this already. It's just we really have not figured out how to convince people to use it. So, like I said, I've had this really cool opportunity since being at SOM and then also now at Perkins+Will to participate in what people are calling a computational design process, and we called it a data-driven computational design process. And this especially came out when we started working for doing a project for Google, and part of the interview process is that they indicated to us that they had run an algorithm on the site that we were putting a proposal for, and they found out that there were 800 different possibilities for that site. And how was our firm prepared to address those 800 possibilities? And we just thought, one, that was a great challenge, but 2, I think for architects, we're pretty used to 3 options. They said, if you come with 3 hand-drawn options, you're just not going to get the job. And so this actually was really exciting because it allowed us to have an opportunity to engage this digital design world in what I felt like was a meaningful way. And it was really what we did is we created we started to we used the digital tools that are off the shelf that you can find, and we used this tool to basically generate or create a lot of data about the different options, design options that we would be exploring with this client. And each one of these options was a unique programmatic option. So it was before it became a physical project. And what we were able to do is we were able to analyze the site and analyze it for a variety of uses and a mix of uses. And that way, what we could do is we could come back to Google and say, we have analyzed this site, and actually we came up with thousands of options, not just 800. And each one of those options, what we did is we created an evaluation tool, a digital evaluation tool, that we basically put into it different criteria, whether it was ease of city approval, or whether it was different parking strategies. We also had a financial calculator and a carbon calculator that was associated with this evaluation tool. And so when we ran this model and we got these thousands of options, what we were able to do is we were able to work with the client to tailor the program to their needs. And this was a big client group, and some people were really focused on well, we want to make some money off of this site. And some people were thinking they wanted to make the greenest project possible. And what we were able to do is put this tool in the hands of our client and let them really make the decision. And so it started with simply ease of approval. So we put in things like site coverage and height limits, parking requirements. And then beyond that, what we tried to do is we were identifying options that could satisfy that desire to sell this property off and make a lot of money. At some point, Google realized they didn't need that money, right? I mean, it's small for them. But what they really were interested in was, could they build enough residential to offset the cost of building their commercial? They thought that was a neat idea. I mean, they can pay for it themselves, but also they wanted to create a mixed-use campus where their employees were living and working on the same site. And then also there's a number of people within that company that are interested in coming up with a really, really green project. And so what we did is we created this carbon calculator working with our in-house sustainability experts, and we broke our carbon footprint into 4 categories, and that's waste and recycling, commercial, residential, energy, and then transportation. And for the Bay Area, transportation is our biggest component of our carbon footprint. And basically what we pointed out is that they needed to work with the city of Mountain View to reduce parking requirements and, in fact, explore opportunities for shared parking. And that was really the way that we were helping them to get to a really reduced carbon footprint. I don't think it's net zero. And so then ultimately, putting all those criteria together, we were able to come up with that orbit of options, and we called it the Google orbit at the time. So when this thing became a physical, when we came down to what the program would be, we were actually able to go through physical modeling and using and really generating many options, and basically we could evaluate each one of these options for both solar access and the amount of sun into the public spaces, and then also the actual energy that would be the energy that the buildings would receive during the year. So once we do that, what we were able to do, and these are actually a few projects pieced together because it was really that one first project with Google that started us down this digital design process, but then we had to kind of piece it into lots of other projects because this is not something that we get paid to do, really. We just have to shoehorn it in. And what we realized is that we really liked this idea of winter sunny spaces for a public realm. And this is something that I think nobody could argue with, is that a sunny place in the middle of winter is going to be well loved. And it's going to be a place where people want to go. And so, for instance, in this project, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a second, Mission Rock in San Francisco, we figured out that in our square, at the north part of the square, there was this little patch of sun that we wanted to protect from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Actually, it turned out to be 11 to 1, so lunch hour. December 21st, guaranteeing that this was going to be sunny, and what we were able to say is that this is going to be one of the most well-loved places in San Francisco because of that sun. And so using that, what we basically were able to do is run through a number of options, but always guaranteeing that that one public place would stay sunny. And that really drove the massing for this project. So this is not the SOM city model. I just had to have this thing, so we recreated it at Perkins+Will. The cool thing is that the SOM city model was built over a number of years with lots and lots of interns, and they built every one of those buildings. This was open source data. Well, okay, it's actually closed source data that the city of San Francisco has, but we were able to barter with them, literally bartered with the planning department to get this information. And so this is a giant LiDAR scan of the city. And it's pretty cool and exciting. And you can see that we went ahead and put Treasure Island in, and all these white buildings are planned new towers. So our project is right here. It's Mission Rock, and our client is the Giants. The Giants got a lease from the Port of San Francisco to develop this property, and so it's a 70-year ground lease. So basically, this project is in the middle of what's called Mission Bay. And Mission Bay is a new development that used to be a rail yard. And again, here's that carbon footprint map. The cool thing about this project is it's in the right location. We knew that if we could develop in this site, and if we could develop at higher densities, those were that many more Bay Area residents at a little bit lower carbon footprint. The site is amazing, and it's just it's about the history of humans and what happens in the world when humans show up. So the Bay Area was pretty much backwaters until about 1848, which is the end of the Mexican-American War, and that's when the United States took over. There's a reason why they're called the 49ers. It's the year after the war was over. And so around that time, if you came, there was actually a bay in Mission Bay, and there's actually a rock outcropping called Mission Rock. But over time, as more and more people came, Mission Bay got filled in, and what this map doesn't show is that this bay had been filled in with boats. All the boats that people had taken to come to San Francisco, but never left. And so it was a whole community of roughneck kind of folks, and so it wasn't a very savory place, and it so much that they built this trestle. And then the city platted this property out and started to sell it, and it got filled in, and over time Southern Pacific Railroad gained control of most of the area and turned it into a rail yard that was associated with the port. And you can see that that Mission Rock has been urbanized over time and now is part of this pier. And you can see these three buildings. Those are literally on that rock outcropping. And on low tide, you can take a kayak out there and go under there and see that rock. But this is Mission Bay. It's not a bay anymore. It's landfill. And there's Mission Creek. And Perkins+Will office currently is right there. And so we look out on the site all the time. So I think the neat thing about this is that Mission Bay, because it's a new development and it's a master plan, basically we were, and this SMWM joined Perkins+Will. Karen Alschuler was part of SMWM, and so she was the master plan designer for Mission Bay. And what's really interesting about this diagram, this is the pedestrian network, is that you can see this is industrial San Francisco. And so the pedestrian network is pretty weak. But when you get a chance to actually design a new place, you can create a robust pedestrian network. One of the issues is that this is a new place for San Francisco, and one of our problems with the Bay Area and also California, and then in general with the United States, is our transit investment is terrible, and we're way behind. And so this is what we call a transit desert. What we're hoping is that as this full plan gets developed, including Mission Rock, is that more transit will come to this area. It's a little backwards. Transit should come first and planning next. And the other neat thing about getting to do this as a master plan project is we got to design it in a way that it had an abundance of open space as compared to this industrial area with this one little place, which is amazing. This is Instagram was right there when they sold for $1 billion. And this is part of a larger planning initiative that the Port of San Francisco is involved in. And we're really right at the heart of it. And this Lot 337 is basically going to be a generator, if they do this development, to make all these improvements on this map. So that development's going to pay for all these waterfront developments or improvements. Those aren't developments. Now, I just got to say, the citizens of San Francisco, or a vocal portion of the citizens of San Francisco, are fighting this, right? So they're trying to prevent this development from happening. They're trying to prevent all development from happening in the city of San Francisco. I think what happens is people come to the Bay Area, and the day that they arrive in the Bay Area, they say, this place is perfect just how it is. It should never change. So it's changed, for sure, and we saw that. There are all these cool new developments that are happening around the area. So looking at the site, I just want to take you quickly through the sort of urban design part of how we came up with the site plan. And first, we really felt that it was important to have a waterfront park. And this was not required in the project, but we thought that this was the right thing to do. And it provides a really great open space amenity for the citizens of San Francisco. And it has a relationship to the ballpark and this historic bridge and the historic Pier 48 in creating this really wonderful framed place. And that's the frame. And then what we wanted to do is we wanted to do Mission Bay one better. These are pretty small blocks, but we wanted to break them in half. And so we would actually get smaller blocks. This is one of the biggest challenges, I think, for designing cities in the modern era is we actually don't have the most effective tool available to us, which is parcelization. Right? So why do you love 13th Street or why do you love any old neighborhood street? It's generally because it's been parcelized into parcels probably no bigger than 25 or 30 feet. And so that creates an amazing amount of variety, both visually but also in terms of the uses that go into those places. And it creates a sense of, it creates resiliency. So we're not dependent on one giant Barnes & Noble to hold that whole block. It's actually 10 different small businesses. If one fails, that's okay. The other 9 are there, and then that one will be regenerated. So this is kind of a goofy image of that park. The Giants are very concerned. They don't want to show any drawings that have buildings in them because they know people hate buildings. And if they do have buildings, don't show the top of them. So we came up with a set of design principles, and we've developed this more, and these are principles that we bring to a lot of the projects. But one is obviously pedestrian bicycles being priority. Access through the project, and in this situation, and actually in all of our waterfront projects, it's about getting to the water. Creating a really robust network of open space. So it's one thing to create open spaces and parks that are disconnected, but the other thing is then how do you actually connect them together and make a network? And then this idea of mixed use and diverse land use. And so these represent office and residential and generally office and residential, and then the ground floor active uses. And so focusing the active uses in really some key places. One was along what we call this pedestrian muse, and then also the square, and then facing the park as well. And that there would be a diversity of these uses. And it's really exciting because the Giants have the 70-year lease. Basically, what they're doing is they are going to maintain the lease of all these ground floor active use spaces, and they're curating them. And they're working with a really cool organization in San Francisco called MadeSF to come up with the right policies as developers and landowners to promote small-scale businesses in this place. And then there was this really great thing about Winter Sun, which this is like the surefire way to sell anything. It's like, guarantee Winter Sun and people will do anything for you. And then obviously it gets really windy there, so we have to work really hard. And we learned a lot at Treasure Island. It's very windy about what it means to have tall buildings and how to protect the pedestrian level from wind accelerations that come with tall buildings. And then this is our district sustainability icon, because developers generally don't like to show what we're really doing because they don't want to be tied into it. That's not the greatest part about this, but they are really committed to doing the best that they can. So, well, people asked us, okay, but what is this place going to be like? You know, how do we know this is going to be a San Francisco neighborhood? And so we thought, well, geez, how do we do that? How do we tell people how this place is going to be like? And so what we did is we got as much GIS data we could, and then also we had all the development numbers for what was going to happen over time, and we started to look at the site in terms of the site, 5-minute and a 10-minute walking radius, and we wanted to evaluate it and see what it meant in terms of dwelling units, population, working population, retail, and then open space, and start comparing it to other really well-loved San Francisco neighborhoods. And so you can see here's the Fillmore district, Valencia Street, which is really, really dense and vibrant, and then Hayes Valley, which seemed like just the right temperature for us. And so you can see we compared it to a number of neighborhoods, and we said, look, within a 5-minute walk, it's going to be about 3,000 dwelling units, and that's what we have over in Hayes Valley. And if you know San Francisco, Hayes Valley is one of the most popular places right now. It's really well loved. And we said, oh my gosh, it's amazing. We have the same amount of jobs. Number of people. And then number of jobs was similar. So it was just so easy. We were saying, we're just creating another Hayes Valley. And same retail. Hayes Valley is growing in terms of retail. There's more space coming online. But again, the benefit of being within this planned area is that we have way more open space than any of these other neighborhoods. So we wanted to get a little bit more into detail of what made Hayes Valley great, right? And I think it goes back to what I was saying just a second ago, is this parcelization issue. And so we went to Hayes Valley, and we measured the street, and we measured all the retail frontages and the numbers of entries, and we found out, that there were lots of them, and that's what made this place really great and well loved. And we also wanted to understand the ground floor and what the relationship of the ground floor to the street was, and we did that by measuring this. And this research is going directly into the requirements that we will be putting in place in our approval documents that will then become legally binding, and people will have to follow these. And it's really about creating small-scale ground floor active uses, lots of entries into unique spaces. And in fact, we're so lucky because the Giants are such progressive clients in terms of community engagement and really doing the right thing by the community, that they are going to curate the ground floor retail. And we've even gotten them to get into this idea of micro active use spaces, so these 500 square foot spaces. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity for us. Now, as I said, the Bay Area, we have a problem with Nimbyism and anti-development and basically a fear of tall buildings. In the Bay Area, a 5-story building is a tower, and so we're proposing quite a bit taller buildings than that. So we had to come up with a creative way to help people understand why we were doing towers and what was the benefit for them. And so what we did is we looked at the site and we said, if you took the site, it's a parking lot right now, by the way. If you took the site, and currently there's about 60% that's development area, and then there's a little park already, and then that blue thing is Pier 48. And then if you took the fabric that's being developed around it, Mission Bay, and Mission Bay is really a compromise. The form of Mission Bay is really squat and blocky, and that's a compromise between the developers and the anti-tall building folks. And we said, well, we could do that, and this is the program we need to fill, and basically that's what you would get, and it's just an extension of Mission Bay. But if we could build a few taller buildings, we could actually carve out the space here and create a waterfront park. And if we were able to do even taller buildings, a few more taller buildings, we could actually carve out this square. And then we don't really know exactly how it's going to get developed per se, but we do have some controls. We know the solar axis on the south and pushing the tall buildings to the north, but we were exploring a number of different options and trying to figure out what's the right one. And so, as I mentioned, so the cool thing and challenging thing about the Bay Area is a city of about 42 different hills. And all of those hills were developed they were probably developed over 100 years ago. And so here are these people that have basically feel that, they've come to take ownership over views from those hills, which makes sense, and that's good and right. And so you can see that there's some really critical regional landmarks that people are really concerned about when you're talking about tall buildings on the waterfront, and include the bridges and the East Bay Hills, most specifically. And so we're required, we have to do this. It's not that we're required, but in order to convince anybody that we're actually, we're really seriously considering this project, we do these pretty robust view studies. And this is a view that nobody from San Francisco really cares about. It's the skyline. They don't see it, so they really didn't care about it. We thought it was really cool, and actually it's pretty amazing because it's a really small project, I think, compared to the downtown. But it's challenged because of these hills behind it. And that's really the view that people care about. And so this happens to be Potrero Hill, and they're our biggest stakeholder that we try and listen to. And so this is Dolores Park. It's these people are they less concerned about the view. And so what we did is, people kind of look at those blocky massing diagrams, the massing models, and they get pretty scared. And so we wanted to help make people feel a little bit more comfortable. And we did these studies where we looked at different skins on the building and just looking at what it would mean. And actually our client, again, this is our client that's afraid of tall buildings, really wanted to make sure he really liked the idea of a tall brick building. So we put some bricks on there and tried to figure that out. Yeah, there are some decent ones. And, we were just having fun with this, and so we wanted to actually go ahead and go a little bit beyond, and we really wanted to try and get people inspired for this, and we put together this pretty cool time-lapse video to sort of see what would happen through the course of the day on this project, and see what it would look like as it went into the nighttime. And it's just, fun opportunities. I don't know what to say. This is a really exciting thing for us to be able to do. So here's the marrying of the SOM to the Baietan, is that we've been involved in many, 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 many community engagement workshops. This is our client who really cares deeply about this. And Kathy Simon, she's the architect of record for the renovation of the ferry building. And really try and come up with creative ways to engage people and get them to really comment and participate in the design of this place. We also held an international design charrette with invited architects. That's Ralph Johnson from Chicago, David Baker, our local housing hero, and over here is Stefan Bainisch. And we got those guys to come out, and they designed a bunch of buildings for the site. And we're not supposed to show this to anybody because the client's totally freaked out about these buildings. But we thought they were amazing, and really starting to get a sense of what could happen here if you got some architects to start to design buildings for this place. And, of course, Bainisch, they took it to another level and embarrassed us all with this building. And it's just, amazing. And they said, well, we gave each of them 2 sites. And Ralph Johnson, who was the last one, he designed the 2 buildings. They were similar. And Stefan Bainisch said, well, we really wanted to have fun. And so we designed this building. But then we wanted to design a building that you guys could handle. Sure enough, we cannot handle that building. So there's pretty cool and evocative renderings. And then actually most recently there's been a really wonderful studio at UC Berkeley that David Baker, he had such a fun time on the charrette that he took the charrette brief and he turned it into a studio at UC Berkeley. So I don't know if there are not a lot of professors left out there, but if there's a professor out there, there's a studio ready for you. And you can see the amazing work that they did in the studio. I mean, that model's like that tall. And just really interesting and evocative stuff that we just cannot do, but really helpful for us to see. And this tower it's not too dissimilar to what the massing would allow, and we were pretty impressed with this open space. Okay, so San Francisco is one thing, right? Because I'm not really too worried about San Francisco. It's already a pretty dense place. Lots of wealthy residents. I mean, right now their biggest problem is the Google bus, and also that the tech people are now displacing the previously rich people from San Francisco. And the big problem with the Bay Area, or the potential and opportunity for the Bay Area, is really this part of the region, which is the East Bay. And we have gotten this really cool opportunity to work with the city of Fremont in coming up with this new thing that's called Warm Springs Innovation District, and it's on the extension of the BART line that'll end up going to San Jose. When BART was designed and planned, there was a system to go to cover the entire Bay Area, but certain communities opted out, especially this one, and I don't know it. Well, if you talked to me before, you know that I feel that there's an impact that this autocentric world has on the technology that these people are developing at Google and Apple and all those places. So I think there's, the technology that we have in our pockets is a suburban antisocial technology. So we're interested in understanding what it means when these companies start moving into the cities. Right now, what we found out is that you can take the tech company out of the suburbs, but you can't take the suburbs out of the tech company. So Salesforce has leased 7 buildings in downtown San Francisco, and Google's there. And what happens is as soon as they occupy a building, all the ground floor retail disappears, and it becomes interior-facing spaces. So the city of San Francisco has to do a lot better job of requiring them to maintain ground floor active uses. That's a different story. So what we wanted to do is we have this new BART station that's coming in place, and we have this really cool thing that's really near an industrial area where people are making things. And most exciting part is that it's right next to the Tesla factory. So they're making electric cars, and it turns out that's a pretty clean tech thing compared to digital technology. I think there's another. You probably have this hard drive. A portable hard drive company that manufactures stuff there, and it's really, really dangerous stuff to be around. But we're working on that. But the Tesla factory is actually pretty clean to manufacture electric vehicles. What we wanted to do here is we wanted to just take this walking radius concept and use it as a land use planning concept. And basically, we put the highest intensity uses within 5-minute walk, and then slightly lower intensity uses within this 10-minute walk, and then reserving the rest of the area for industrial and light manufacturing because this is actually a critical part of our economy in the Bay Area and potentially offers jobs to people that are not college educated. So these are real working class jobs. The city asked us not to design the project, which was a little bit of a challenge for us, but also an exciting opportunity because we had been talking a lot about performance-based planning, and this really actually comes out of LEED, ND, and LEED in general. And I mean, it is funny. 15 years ago, I mean, we're still talking trash about LEED, right? It's not great, but 15 years ago, we were at Hopes and we're saying, this LEED thing is not so good, but wouldn't it be good if it could be a step. And now LEED is just all over the place. And I'm glad to know that I can come back to University of Oregon in Hopes and people are still trashing LEED. So that's good. But Lead ND actually is a pretty neat thing because it's a performance-based planning document. And so we took some cues from that, and we came up with some performance standards on connectivity and in terms of the street and block pattern. And this is kind of a conceptual layout of how that might happen. We also came up with a set of performance standards for open space and sizes of open space and proximity and distance that any one worker or residents would have to walk to get to that open space. And then also the cool thing is that network concept, so that we also could put in place performance standards for open spaces being required to be connected to certain different types of bike paths and enhanced pedestrian streets. And, just looking at the character of what this place is, I'm sorry I don't have any existing condition pictures or character pictures of Fremont, but it's a suburban community. And so they don't have a park typology that's smaller than 4 acres. So we created 3 new park typologies for them: an urban park, an urban plaza, and, they already have that. It's just tighter. So we also worked with our transportation consultant in the city and the different transportation agencies to coordinate bus lines and a new employee and resident shuttle that would go through this neighborhood. And then this is that bike network that I told you about. And the cool thing about these performance standards is that while we were asked not to design the project, pretty sure that if you follow the performance standards, you're going to end up with our design anyway. So it's just a little trick that we played on the city. And the city of Fremont, amazingly enough, has the most robust public art program and public art requirements of any city in the Bay Area. And this is going to be a really, really, really mixed-use place. It's going to have everything from your typical office all the way to industrial uses. It's going to have a wide variety of housing types in order to provide a wide variety of choice for people in housing. And then, of course, the complement of services and amenities that make this place livable and can help convince people to come and live in an urban lifestyle, as we were talking about earlier. And then, obviously, the sustainability metrics are big. And the cool thing is right now in California, we've got this new thing, or Cal Green is becoming more prominent, and Brent was talking about this earlier. And so we were able to actually convince the city to simply peg their requirements for buildings to Cal Green and some percent above it. And it ends up being that if you follow Cal Green, you're a LEED Gold project. And that's pretty good. That other project that we're working on in Ottawa is actually a one planet community, and so that's going to be net zero. So again, that's how we do it in the United States. We're doing okay. But in other places, they're doing a lot better. So, I'm not trying to say that this is great work and this is like the most sustainable stuff. We're doing our best, but we really need a lot of work in terms of education, because ultimately it's not just about the metrics of sustainability, right? And that's this idea of the scary thing of the net zero car, right? At some point, we can't tell people they can't drive or they shouldn't drive or driving's not good because of the carbon footprint. At some point, we have to convince people that walkable neighborhoods are good for other reasons, right? Social interaction, health reasons. If you have less cars, you're less likely to get hit by them. And so, anyway, we recognize that we're not there right now, and the city recognized that. But we did want to think about creating some more aggressive targets for that carbon footprint part of the problem. And if you remember that earlier chart that ranked San Francisco to other cities, Vancouver was 5 tons per person. San Francisco was about 12. And actually, amazingly enough, Fremont's about 13.8, depending on where you live. And so we chose 5 as a goal. We couldn't get there. We got to 5.6. We chose 5 because it's Vancouver, and we wanted to try and outdo Peter Busby, our new managing director in Perkins+Will, the net zero living building guy. And we tried our best, but we didn't get there. So, but what we realized is that one, the densities that you need, and then also the reduced parking requirements that you need to achieve this target are not financially feasible today. Like, we had an economic consultant, we met with the developers. There's just no way we could build these densities today. So we came up with this concept of phased master plans. I mean, I don't think we came up with this concept, but we convinced the city to do this, where sites that were larger than 5 acres, they could come in with a master plan concept, and that if the city approved that master plan concept, and the master plan concept would get them to the ultimate target, they could start earlier phases at lower densities. And then over time, and then also reserve, the way that they would design that site would be to reserve land for future and higher density developments. And over time, we could achieve that target. And so that we're talking about a 20 or 30-year timeline. And then, again, like I said, it's not really simply about the metrics. It's actually about creating places that are well-loved and vibrant and walkable, and people can feel that comfortable and enjoy a high-quality lifestyle that is that's low impact on our local and global ecologies. And really, I'm just kind of giving you guys a snapshot of what we're doing, what I've been able to do, and I hope that what you can see here is that there's a thread. And I think my experience here at the University of Oregon and at Hopes in particular has what it did for me is it made it so I was a mission-driven person. And I think I've said this a few times to a number of you, but in general, architects and people that come to architecture school, they're already somehow keyed into caring about the built environment and caring about reducing our impact on the world and making places better for people and also ecologies. And I think what happens is that if you're a mission-driven person, you never lose, right? You may lose some of the minor battles, but you always get back up and you keep fighting that, the fight. And so if there's one thing that I gained from, Kevin and the passion that he had, and Jason and Ross hunkered down in the, Solar Center, was that there was a mission at hand, and we were doing something for a reason. And so the nice thing about that is that you kind of get to go home at night and you feel good about yourself, and you can take the losses, I think, a little bit better, and you can deal with the problems and challenges, and you just say, I'm going to keep working towards it. And so I would definitely encourage all the students that are participating in Hopes to, grab hold of that and really don't go out there to make a buck. I mean, you're in the wrong profession already. Go out there to do something, to make the world a better place and change the world. We can do that. I believe that too. So, anyway, thanks for hanging with me. That's the end of my show. Thanks. I guess if you guys have some questions, I'm definitely willing to.
Thank you so much, Noah. Now we're going to open it up to some Q&A. So if you have any questions.
We got a question back here.
We got a question back there.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be super formal.
Okay, Brent back here. I guess I was just closest to the mic. But one thing I was wondering is, I love seeing that Banish building. Why can't we build that? I can work on the details of that, but I guess what the question sort of more broadly is sort of, if in the sort of back and forth negotiation with the developer, what is enough income and how much is enough for them to make? And I mean, obviously, like, taking the risk and building all this, they should make money on it, but part of the goal is that we're giving them more height and more density, and the hope would be that you could build greener buildings and more architecture compelling. So I guess that's my question, is like, how do you do that dance back and forth? Because I don't really do that as much, and sort of like, how do you push on them a little bit, or find metrics to say that more creative design is going to get more money, or how do you start to push architecturally?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about that this morning, and just like, we really need to encourage architects to do more post-occupancy evaluations. I don't think you have to do that. Like, you just have to pay for them to do it, right? And so, really it's just, I don't know, I honestly just got lucky with clients. Like, the client in Ottawa, they came to us and said, we want to do a one planet community. And luckily the Giants also, they have a pretty strong commitment to making this a eco-district. And so there are pretty robust plans. I mean, I'm showing you guys the pretty, rudimentary, dumbed-down diagrams of this thing and like the little hand in the leaf. But there's a pretty complex system of district energy, district heat, and water. It's just we can't show that right now because I think one of the issues is that things are too politically contentious, and I think that developers are. I mean, I don't want to defend developers, right? Because they're gonna make money off that project. But developers, I think, are not willing to take risks in the Bay Area or in California and maybe in the United States because they know that the fight is so bad. They don't want to get stuck being legally bound to things that they may not be able to come through with. And I think, I don't know what it is, but we need to figure out a way to unlock this issue in the Bay Area. What happens in Canada is that cities will actually pre-entitle, and they'll do their own master planning and urban design, and they'll pre-entitle projects, and they'll pre-entitle properties in whole swaths of the city. That's pretty much how a lot of Vancouver got built. And what they do is then they come back to that landowner or the developer that comes in and says, we took your property from being X amount of dollars to 2X, and you owe us about half of that, and you can give it to us in affordable housing, you can give it to us in high-quality public realm, you can give it to us in a more sustainable project. We just don't do that. Cities in the United States basically give up all of the value of entitlement to developers. But they also make it really, really painful. So if you go to most cities, most developers will probably opt for the path of least resistance, which is an open surface parking lot. So I think in order for us to convince clients to do more sustainable projects, it's really going back to that marketing piece. It's just we as a society need to make that a value. And while LEED is right, I mean, you have those LEED certified towers in Las Vegas that people will die in if the power goes off in 15 minutes, they'll suffocate. And that somehow is a LEED platinum building. But I think that, it's just we as a society need to set the bar higher on everybody. And we are. I mean, I think this conference is amazing because all these people that Kevin mentioned are out there and they're affecting change, and they're people that have come to this conference and they heard something and they are more receptive to ideas of sustainability. So it's really nothing that I could do or we can do as a firm with a client. It's just a mindset. We have to keep working towards changing this mindset. And I think it's exciting and I like doing that. So it's a fun little challenge. Like, how do you convince people that are in their SUVs and their two-car garage family, single family home? How do you convince them to change their lifestyle? I mean, I don't think you can do it directly one-on-one, and I don't think that one generation will do it. It might be, their kids or something get sick of having to, get driven everywhere or something. So I don't know. Anyway. Yes?
Noah, you talked about Mike Baietan in terms of his collaboration, in terms of this idea of involving people in the process and so forth. The thing you didn't talk about is the fact that he chooses the clients in a particular way. In other words, that he's trying to work for a particular set of people who are more vulnerable and otherwise can't afford the services of an architect who actually need it. Without him would be sort of out to lunch, so to speak. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, and also talk about the question of whether you think that urban design, per se, can deal at all with questions of social and economic equity, or whether that's completely a matter of politics, and sort of not approachable through the sorts of things that you're talking about.
Well, I mean, I think that's not exactly how Mike and Baietan Architects works. I mean, their clients are typically nonprofit housing developers, and they pay. And if you're thinking about going into affordable housing, go ahead and do it. You'll get a paycheck. But what I think is really important to recognize is that in the United States, we have basically housing as a market commodity, right? And that there's a challenge with that because when the supply is really low, basically there's this huge demand, and private developers are only going to supply demand that it's at the highest end. And so it's a big problem with a market-driven housing economy. If you think about other places in the world that you think are great developments, let's say Malmo or Hammarby, those are government housing projects for middle-income families. And we used to do that, right? So at the 50s, we had these housing authorities, which now are they have their bad reputation. But actually, Jason Wilkinson, Solar Information Center, his grandfather, Frank Wilkinson, was the head of the Los Angeles Housing Authority. And he was involved in this project called Chavez Ravine. And it was a housing project for middle-income Latino families. And a number of private housing developers or private developers in the area shut that project down because basically what they said was that if the government is going to start supplying housing for moderate income people, it's going to ruin our market, right? We're not going to have a business anymore of housing development. And then the really terrible, sad thing is that project didn't go forward. It was a Neutra design project, and it ended up being the Dodger Stadium instead. And Frank Wilkinson was tried as a communist and put in jail for 10 years. Okay, so that is what we're dealing with in terms of that's the context that we're developing affordable housing. So affordable housing, and Mike would be the first to tell you this, it's a drop in the bucket. It's just not even coming close. And we feel that right now in the Bay Area. People in my office, young designers, they can't afford to live in the Bay Area. So they're living in shared housing situations, and they feel pinched. And affordable housing, by the way, is not that it's government subsidized. Affordable housing simply means that you spend 30% of your income on housing. So obviously, if you make $1 million a year, that's easy. But if you make $20,000 a year, it's really hard to find a place that. And if you're making $60,000 or $70,000 if you're a junior designer, you're spending 60% of your income on housing. So that's a big problem. And yeah, I think it can't just be urban design. I mean, obviously, there's urban design strategies. More housing, approving higher density housing in transit-oriented neighborhoods, requiring these small lease spaces on the ground floor for incubator businesses, and obviously having amenities and services that are accessible, and placing amenities and services that are also in lower income neighborhoods. But then you start getting into economics and really in development and business development and government policy in terms of how do you encourage, how do you stimulate, how do you get a grocery store to go into a neighborhood that basically if you did the economic analysis, people are not able to afford, it wouldn't cover the cost of that grocery store. We're working. Another cool thing, I didn't mention this about Perkins+Will, is we are committed to the Social Responsibility Initiative, the 1% for Architecture. And so we're doing 2 really cool projects. One's actually in the Tenderloin, really near where Brent's Pooplet is. And then the other is actually in East Oakland, and we're working with a nonprofit to do a little mercado, and so a small-scale market in the worst neighborhood in East Oakland. And so I mean, we're working as urban designers, and we're working there, and we're just providing our services and just really our creative thinking about how to take an existing building and turn it into a small-scale a market with lots of small-scale shops. So it's really has to come from both sides. And I said this earlier, a lot of our issues are governance and policy issues, and I guess everybody saw the Supreme Court ruling just yesterday. I mean, we're kind of moving in the wrong direction at the moment. So we have to organize as citizens and demand a more equitable society. And I think the cool thing, too, is when you get the sustainability piece and the equity piece to come together. I think about those people in Stockton, right? Suburban sprawl, the people that are sprawling, those are lower-income people. And they're living, they're spending way more money than they on their car, and they're spending way less time with their kids, and they're not getting out and they're not exercising, and they're driving to a neighborhood that doesn't have services and amenities like those people that live in Hayes Valley do. At any chance we get, we definitely like to, come up with urban design strategies that can address this inequity. But ultimately, it's a society.
But I think that's a little bit. In other words, I think they're really good at bringing together designers, ecologists, planners, landscape architects. That's sort of what this whole thing is about. I think we're a little bit less good at bringing in some of these other people who have a huge role in what you might call these structural problems of the economy, which are really hampering kind of bringing together people in a very communal way, which we really need to do. Because as you say, Google is displacing the formerly rich displace the formerly rich, and that's not quite true because Google is also displacing people who are more like me and you. And people who are commuting the longest, other people who are the poorest. And these are real serious problems, which I think we need to start to address in addition to all of the quote-unquote design things, which we're doing very, very well, of course.
And I think the Mission District is a really good example. And again, if you guys need to leave, you just go. But if we can, Howard and I can go and if Kevin ever got involved, we'd be here all night. But I think the Mission District is a really interesting case in point. I mean, people love it, and it's a really cool place. And so why wouldn't you, if you have money, why wouldn't you buy into that place? And one of the issues is that it's not just affordable housing, like the housing prices are going up, but also the restaurants and the stores, they're switching out. It's not the Latino mercado that was, you could get some inexpensive produce. It's now the boutique market hall, right? And so even if you were to, so it's not just an affordable housing issue, right? You could have affordable housing, and there is some affordable housing in the Mission District, but then it's also really expensive to just live there. And so, I mean, we do need to do better and at engaging policymakers and the people that have the money and actually really ourselves as citizens, because I think that that's the trick with democracy is that we could organize if we could get around some sort of shared goal. We could organize. We could vote for the right guy or the right gal. We could overcome the bajillions of dollars that people are spending. We definitely could do that. So I don't, so that's that lifestyle guide for urban living. I think there's something there in terms of how we can change people's mindset, and it is this kind of a event, and how can we all go out and get somebody to come to, I mean, we're all converted here, right? We've said that before, we're preaching the converted, and so it's like a big group hug when we come to Hopes. But then we go out into the world, and we're little agents of change, and so... And making it compelling. I think that's one thing that we try and do is we dumb it down. We try and so basically what I showed you, urban design, we try and make it deceptively simple looking, right? And we also try and make it really enticing and exciting. right? We want people to want to live this way. We want people to feel like they want to be socially responsible or live a sustainable lifestyle. Matthew.
So one of the things that's really come out of your talk, I think, is this Nimbyism. And that has me quite curious because it seems like that's a crux of a layer of challenge which is superimposed over the design piece entirely. Basically psychological. How are you able to convince a community or a group of citizens that this is actually for their betterment when they're predisposed to not want whatever it is? And in your experience, I'm just curious how you approach that, and if there are techniques, and surely it's something you think about a lot, and you went to school to kind of understand the process and whatnot. What do you see as the most effective way to bring innovative ideas into the public realm that can be accepted?
Well, I mean, we do these engagement workshops. They're really cool. And we do these kind of graphic things where we show, here's your project at lower heights, and then you don't get any open space. And then we've done that as well with like services and amenities. It's not very fair because somebody will say, you could build that, and you could build it at that height, and you could carve out a square, and you just force the city to tell the developers to do that. So actually, with Mike Baietan, working at Baietan was really cool because he was pretty adamant about bringing professionals from all different aspects of the physical world, so developers and service providers, to come in and talk to us. And this really wonderful woman came in, and she sort of like short Jewish woman, older, and she comes in just like firecracker, and she was a trained nurse, and she worked in mental health institutions in California, and then they got shut down, right? And so all of her patients got set out into the streets, and the government decided to give them a housing voucher, right? And so these people, they have mental health problems, mental health issues, and they go and they start to rent a place from somebody, and of course something happens, and they got kicked out. And so the nurses got together, and they created the first nonprofit housing development a corporation to house these mentally ill folks. And she said they would go all over the place to try and develop these housing projects, and they'd go to communities, and they would just have lines of people out the door opposing them, right? We don't want this in their community. And she'd say, well, we try and explain to them, this is your brother or your sister, or do you want that, mentally ill person on the street, or do you want them in a facility where there's a nurse that can care for them? And, she's been doing this since the 70s. So, I mean, my experience is tiny compared to that. And what she said to us, and we're so excited, we're listening to her, and we're like, she's going to tell us. We're going to find out how to do this. And she's like, we're always waiting for a conversion moment. We're always waiting for a conversion moment. She said, guess what? It never happened. And she said, we finally realized we just have to beat them. I was like, what? How do you say that? So I don't know if that's the right answer, but, you can't convert those people. You just can't. I don't know what to say. I've never been in an experience where somebody that was opposed to a project or opposed to development in the Bay Area were reachable. We just went through those red stains on the map come from this thing called Plan Bay Area. And we don't plan the Bay Area. Okay, it's 110 separate cities, and we only have 2 regional planning agencies. One's transportation, and one's the BCDC, which is in charge of 100 feet of the shoreline. And so basically the Bay Area is an unplanned metropolis. All these cities do their own thing. And so the Plan Bay Area is really just an aggregation of data of how are those individual cities planning. So the good news is a lot of those cities are planning for higher density urban development. Well, I meant to put this as a photo in there, but if you went to these public hearings, they were getting shut down. They had to call the police out because even in the Bay Area, even in San Francisco, you had people going there and saying, this is part of an international socialist plot to take away my freedom. And so you're just like, I'm never going to convince that person So you kind of have to marginalize them and then beat them. And, the cool thing about... I don't know. Anyway. I don't know. I mean, I just, there's no other way. And the cool thing about the Bay Area is that 95% of the development over the next 30 years is going to be within 5% of the urban area. It's only 10 cities, really. And so what we can do is we do go and we say to people, we say, see these little red stains? That's where we're going to develop. So don't worry. Nothing's going to happen to your neighborhood, right? And I think, because often, but then in those red stains, those NIMBYs, it's just hard. I mean, I don't mean to ramble, but in Berkeley, right? So Berkeley, pretty progressive place, right? Basically, the population in Berkeley, the residential population in Berkeley is unchanged in 50 years. Well, the global population's grown, and the Bay Area population has grown tremendously. And even in Berkeley, the number of jobs has grown over 350% in the same amount of time. And people wonder why there's so much traffic in Berkeley. And so every time we get a new housing development and there's a really progressive developer and he says, we're going to do this housing development and we're not going to include cars. No parking. Oh my God, you can't do that. That's going to cause traffic. And so it's like people with their fear, people with fear of terrorism, right? Don't worry about terrorism. Chances are you're not going to die from a terrorist. You get in a dang car every day. That's how you're going to die. So people are really terrible at risk assessment. And they're definitely, and if they're bad at risk assessment, they're bad at understanding urban planning and urban design issues. So I really don't know. That's a very long-winded answer to just say, you got to find the right battles and then win them and marginalize those people and hopefully that you get enough people that think that this is the right thing, social equity and a more sustainable world, being able to walk your kid to preschool in the morning, if you can convince enough people that that's a good thing, I think that would be the way that we do it. It's just not going to happen one-on-one. At your own risk.
So with your the little urban living, urban guide to urban living, who is that marketing towards? Because I can imagine you don't have to convince a low-income person to move within walking distance of their job, but so you're trying to get, is it middle class, upper middle class?
Trying to get Apple. They're pretty much, have you seen the dang campus that they're designing? What the hell? I don't know. And you saw on that map of the Bay Area, that's exactly the epicenter of our autocentric culture. We really want, and it's just so crazy because now all those Google employees are living in San Francisco, and so now they're getting these buses to drive them. It's just like they're creating these crazy... Rube Goldberg devices to do something that we could so simply do if we had mixed-use, transit-oriented communities. And here you have Apple, who's like the master of our universe. Steve Jobs save us from ourselves. Everybody has to have the iPhone 6 now. And just like, those people are so out of touch with reality. And, it's upsetting to be in the Bay Area. The one good news I can bring you is that somehow within the last 6 months or a year, it went from being really cool to be a tech worker to being the worst thing you could be. Like, you're better off being an investment banker in San Francisco. So, I don't know. I don't want to, get down on those folks, but it's really marketed towards autocentric folks that they are probably not lower income. Well, only if the city requires that project to include affordable housing, right? the city of San Francisco does that. Yeah, and the client will, the client's okay with that. In order to develop in San Francisco, there's an inclusionary housing law, and so those kind of projects have to have that. It's not necessarily the right way to get that done, but I really can't answer that last question. I'm a little concerned that the answer is no. It's just, we're not. And I don't know if it's a supply or demand issue, so I don't know what we're doing wrong, but we're not providing enough affordable housing for anybody, really. So.
Do you have any more questions?
All right. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much.